This AI system that I'm gonna teach you how to build will allow any B2B company to scale while staying lean by using AI. Before we go into it, we gotta clarify something. This is the system that I'm gonna present to you. For now, we're gonna clean it up so you don't get distracted. But first, before I can explain to you in depth how this works, how you can build one of these, what you can build one of these for, we have to address some fundamentals. Because without fundamentals, I cannot teach you the in-depth material. Let's clear this as well, so you don't get distracted. What is AI? That's the first question. See, because there's a lot of people that think AI is automations, connecting different things. It is, but in the word of it, it's artificial intelligence. Notice the word, this is the key word. Intelligence. That's what we are building here. Business intelligence. And we're going to create this in the form of a system. So it's going to be an artificial intelligence system, or as I like to call it, AIS. So we covered what artificial intelligence is. AI, it's intelligence. As humans, we have neural networks in our brain, which basically work like this. All of these little dots have little bits of intelligence that we learn. So for example, this can be, we learned that 1 plus 1 equals 2. We learned that 2 plus 2 equals 4. We learned that 2 plus 3 equals 6. And then when we connect these all together, we can solve equations like x squared equals 3. So x equals, what's the answer here? I don't know, not sure. But as humans, we have neural networks. AI has digital neural networks, DGIs. No, what the fuck is DGIs? Not DGIs. Digital neural networks. Meaning it has intelligence as well, and you give it the intelligence. Meaning, if you teach it, the way I do AI is related to copywriting. You have AI for a lot of things. You have AI for data, mathematics, machine learning, predicting algorithms, all of that. I use it for writing at this moment, and what I'm going to teach you is regarding writing. So this can be different writing styles, different writing guidelines, how to write X, how to write headlines, how to write scripts, all of that. And when you connect all of this, you get outputs. So this is intelligence. It's important to understand that what we are building here, what I'm going to show you, is intelligence. It's not automations. Yes, it's automated at scale to allow you to scale while staying lean. If you remember, it was what was up here, but we build intelligence. That's what we are worried about. Now, what is a system? A system is made of components, say like this, that when connected together, they work to perform certain action. An AI system is no different. And this is what an AI system is made of. You have large language models, you have databases, you have prompts, instructions, and structure. Are you with me so far? Good. Large language model, and you have models as well inside of the large language models. Large language models, you mainly have three, which is closed AI. People call it open AI, but it's not open. You have anthropics, so this is cloud. you have Google's. Then on the models you have 3.5, 4.0, 2.1, 3. On the 3 you have Sonnet, Opus, and another one that I don't use. In Google you have Gemini and Ultra. It's important to understand what are the pros and the cons of all of this, because I can give you two examples right now. Two very good examples for you to understand. Anthropics, Claude, is very good at copywriting, very good at writing. Don't ask me why, but it's the best out of them all. But GPT is very good at holding memory, meaning, say this is a chat GPT chat, and each one of these is an input. So input 1, input 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is GPT and this is Claude. Again, I gotta teach you the fundamentals before I can go into the more complex stuff. And this is what I'm doing here. I'm teaching you fundamentals so you can think about the systems first. These are inputs. GPT, the information you give it here about an ICP, he will remember it here at the bottom, at input 6. On Claude, that doesn't happen. If you give it an information here, by here, he will have kind of forgot it. What about Google? Google is very good, but Google's outputs are very short, and my outputs need to be minimum 4,000 words long. So I cannot use Google, but I use Google for a bunch of things, because you have to think as well. What is Google? Google is a data platform. They have the best data. So if you ask Google for in real life, in real time data, it will give it to you, like coupons, for example. So this is done. Databases, this is pretty easy, and I'm going to explain these three at once. These are all components of the system, and this is how one component can be done, as you'll see in a bit. Here you have model, let's say it's Claude 3. Here you'll have instructions. Here you'll have prompts. This will link to an output. This will link to an input. In this case, we're going to do 2 inputs, because I'll need to explain something to you. And then you have a database. Let's say you are trying to automate, let's say you are a cold email agency, and you want to create a system, a business intelligence system to send cold emails for you, to write cold emails for you. This is how you would do it. Firstly, you would need to choose the correct model. In this case, it would be Claude 3. And I forgot the settings as well. You have the model. In this case, it's Claude 3, so this is good. Then you have 3 parts. Instructions, it's where you will teach it how to write and how to think about the task that it's going to perform, in this case writing emails. So this can be things like, okay, start off with a hey, then do a personalized first time where you compliment the person, or where you say, I know we haven't met before, but I'm reaching out because XYZ. Then provide your case study, and then end with a CTA. Always make the emails 50 words. Don't use complicated sales jargon. Write like you are speaking with a colleague. Things like that. Like exactly, think about it this way. If you were hiring a copywriter to do it for you, how would you teach him how to write the emails? That's how you want to think about instructions. Prompts is basically linking this, and these are the inputs that you'll have in your system. And how do you think, a client of mine asked me this yesterday, which is, what inputs can we put into the system? And I like to think of it this way. If you were to delegate this task to a mentor of yours, so you'd like, okay, mentor John, can you write me this cold email? What would be all the information that he would need to be able to perform the task? And that's what you're going to put as inputs. So this could be things like, who's the ICP? What problem do they have? What does that problem lead to? How do you fix it? Who have you fixed it for? What is the CTA? All of that. And prompts, you're basically going to be explaining what this is. So for example, you're going to write something like ICP input 1. His problem input 2. You see? Explaining what these are. And then you'll also have the database. You see here you have database. These are going to be all the examples that you can provide on how the task is done. So this is why this is actual business intelligence. Because not only are you teaching it how to do the task, you are giving it examples of how you've done the task successfully. And you're going to come here and you're going to link it in the prompt. You'll write, this is how I want you to perform the task. And then you're going to doc 1. This is a basic component of a system. This would work to write emails. But what if you want to make it a bit differently? So what if you need it to be a little bit more complex? So for example, let's say you are writing ads. It's difficult to get an AI, at least current AI, to write the ads like you want it to write, like you want them to be written. So what would you do in this case? You have two options. Okay, we covered this, we can remove this, and now we are moving on to structure. This is, I'm going to explain structures in this. Let's remove all of this. Structure. And this is going to be for ads. An ad has 3 steps to it. It has the hooks, the body, and the CTA. You have 3 options. Option 1, 2, 3. It's divided. That's a little bit. Option 1 you could do like I just did, which is model, instructions, prompts, all the inputs, an output, and a database. And the output would be a full ad. But this doesn't work very well because it has hallucinations. It's hard for him to do very complex tasks at once. You want to break it down into smaller pieces. So what would you do? You'd have your same inputs necessary for someone to write the ad, and you would break them down. So you would send all of these inputs to a large language model 1. Keep in mind, this is a large language model. So when I now write large language model, this includes model, prompt, model, instructions, and prompt. Large language model includes model, instructions, and prompt. Is that clear? Okay, now we can move on. By the way, it's going to be a bit complex from now because it's going to be on a whiteboard as well. If you want to see this in the platform itself, check out my other videos because I did this and explained this in the platform multiple times. And I'm going to be explaining it more in the future. And this would send to an output 1. And this LLM, so LLM 1, would be solely to write the hooks. Then you would send this information to a large language model 2 with a database 2. And large language model 2 would write body. Let's recap. Each one of these will have the instructions on how to write. So the large language model 1 will have instructions on how to write the hooks. The large language model 2 will have instructions on how to write the body. And the database 1 will have examples of hooks you've written. And this one, D2, will have examples of how you've written the body. And then you do the same for large language model 3 with D3, and LLM3 would be CTA. And before I show you the third option, I want to give you just something here, which is large language model 1, this whole component, a component of a system, which is the large language model plus the database, will know how to perform the task. Now, you can ask it, or you can ask it to write either 1, 2, 3, 50, 100, 150 hooks at a time. And you can create also an input which will be, you have to think of inputs as questions that the user will have to ask for the large language model to perform its task. You can create an input which is what style of hooks do you want to write? Another input would be who's the target audience. I'll remove this. Another input would be what are they struggling with. So on, so on. And how would this look when you export it, when you put it live? For example, if you are building this for a client, it would look something like this. So let's say it's 3 inputs. You would be taken to a platform which will have input 1, input 2, input 3, output 1, output 3, output 2, output 3, and submit. And this is where you start to see the power of an intelligence system, which is anytime you want to build an ad, you only have to answer because you've designed this already. The large language model 1 knows how to write hooks, large language model 2 knows how to write bodies, large language model 3 knows how to write CTAs. And by the way, you can put an input which is tone of voice. Or you can put a D2 in large language model 1, which is examples of tone of voice. And then how would you connect it? And I'm getting a little bit off track of here. We'll come back to this 1 second because this is important for me to explain to you. Let's say what where do I write this? Large language model, D1 are examples, D2 are tone of voice. You will do this in the prompts. So you put a prompt which is examples, D1, tone of voice, D2. Sorry you got sidetracked, but I had to answer this because this is an objection and question that a lot of people have, which is how can I get an AI to write in my tone of voice? You have 2 ways. You can put it as a database or you can put it as an input. For example, what is the tone of voice? And you would paste 50 examples that you had, but it's easier if you are always going to be using this system for yourself or for one client. It's easier to create a database. Let's go back to this, because this is how it works in the platform. You will have to answer this question, this question, this question, hit submit, and in 15 seconds you'll have 3 of these, or 5 of this, 3 of this, and 3 of this in your tone of voice, properly written, because you've taught it how to do. And think about how this looks at scale, when you can create ads just by answering 3 questions. The same way you would teach you would say to your copywriter, yo, we need an ad built. You need to be like, okay, who's the target? What is his problem? What are they struggling with? Inputs. He would ask you the inputs, for the inputs. And then you would take maybe 1 hour to write all of this. You would have to check with him, or maybe 1 day, 2 days. If you can build it into something like this, that you can do at scale, that knows how to write it, because it's easier to teach it into this than to someone you are hiring that will maybe take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to learn how you want it to write. Let's continue, because we still have a lot to cover. I'm gonna be honest with you. I have a call in 15 minutes from now, so it's 3:10 right now. So we won't be able to make this very long. But I want to show you another way that you can build this. Because as you see, the large language models here connect information with each other. Input 1 doesn't link to large language model 2. But you can do a system which is input 1, input 2. Let's just do 2 inputs to show the example. You could connect this to a large language model 1, which does the same thing, so writes the hooks with a D1 and connect it to an output 1. And then, instead of connecting the different large language models, like this, you would create a different large language model here, and you'd connect the inputs to this one. So instead of the information passing from one to another, it goes inputs to one LLM, inputs to another LLM. You see how this works? Why does this work so well? This structure is better when it's a long structure, because here you have 1, 2 connections. Here you'll have way more connections, because for every, let's say it's 4 inputs, and it's 3 different LLMs. So it's 4 times 3, that's 12 connections you are making. Here you made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's half of the connections. It will run faster. And if these are 10 LLMs, it's gonna take a lot of time and it won't work very well. Now let me show you another thing, which is you can do different inputs. And for this now, I'm going to do another example. I'm going to go back, I'm going to design a system here. And I'm going to explain to you the system. Beautiful. Let's say you are a full stack content creation agency. So you do LinkedIn content, emails, ads, whatever. Let's say you have an onboarding call and you get an information about your client. I'm going to design it, then I'm going to explain to you. 04, this is 05. Can you see it very well? Okay. Have three initial inputs, which is who's my ICP, what does he struggle with, and what does that lead to. Okay? So these are the questions someone will have to answer for the system to run. It's badly written. What does he struggle? I3. What does that lead to? You can see this system has, why is this a complex system? It has multiple large language models. So these top ones are all GPT, and then all of these are Claude. GPT, Claude. And then you see it has inputs along the build. And you're like, what? What is that? Let me explain. So let's say a user gives these questions. It would run by a first large language model, which is how would this user, this ICP, confess his pain points to his mentor, so you can get that output. That is GPT-4, because that's going to give us angles. And I can LLM 3.5, because we have for recap and list. Then it could pass to a large language model 2, which is how would he confess that to his co-founder, because he will confess differently what's going on with his mentor than with his, co-founder, because it's two different people, two different dynamics, two different relationships. You talk about your problems differently with your boss than you do with your colleague. So what the purpose of this is, before we start writing copy, I want to see how he speaks about his problems with different people. And large language model 3 could be, for example, with his wife or with his best friend. Then large language model 3.5 would be, give me all of the objections and pain points that this ICP said to me in these three contexts, three different environments, let's say. Because once we have this, we can move on to copy. So for example, here, keep in mind, when I write large language model, this might be important. It's instructions, prompts, and the model. And this is an intelligent system, especially when it comes with data. This is an intelligence system or a neural network. Then you could pass it to large language model 4, where you have taught it how to write headlines, you have given it examples on how to write headlines, and you've prompted it correctly. So after it goes through this and it has a list of 15 problems, you could ask it to write headlines for you. And then you could pass to large language model 5, where here you have an input 4, which can be a question which is, how do you fix that problem? So let's say the problem is he lacks leads. Input 4 would be you answering, how do you fix the problem of the ICP? And based on how you fix that problem, it would create, for example, hooks or a lead for a sales letter or sales page. Remembering that for headlines, for leads, or for hooks, you have taught it how to write pre-handling before, you have given it examples. Then it could move to large language model 6, which can be like, okay, who have you helped before? So let me write it here. Input 4, how you help. Input 5, who you helped. Input 6, what's your guarantee? And based on these two inputs, it would create For example, the body of a sales page or the body of an ad, something like that. Whatever you want, whatever your use case is, whatever you are trying to create an intelligence system for. And large language model 7 would be CTAs or outros, for example. Now let me clean this to explain to you how this runs at scale. Because this is how the build looks on the backstage. By the way, this is built on stack.ai. I have a link below for it if you want to join it. It's a very good platform. Very good platform. I got a lot of videos in this channel about it, and I will keep making these videos as long as I use the platform. This is how it looks in the building section, but how will this look when you are using it? Look a little bit something like this. Let's say this is for hooks, for ads. So this is hooks, this is body, this is CTA, and this is the full ad. Or combinations. Because for example, on large language model 4, you can ask for 6 hooks. On large language model 5, you can ask for 3 bodies. Large language model 6, you can ask for 3 CTAs. And on large language model 7, you can ask for a lot of different combinations. So for example, you'll have hook 1, hook 2, hook 3, hook 4, hook 5, hook 6, B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3. You could do, for example, you could ask here for, I think this is like 72 different combinations, which is H1, B1, C1, H1, B1, C2, H1, B1, C3, and then, so, boom, 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 then B2, C1, B2, C2, B2, C3, B3, C1, B2, C3, okay, so it's 9 times 6. What's that calculation? It's 54. So large language model 7 could be an output with 54 outputs. So the combination of all of this. All the hooks with all the bodies and all the CTAs. In this case it's 54 outputs. Mathematics. But this is how it would work. You would come here, you would answer all of these inputs. And if you remember what they are, with the ICP, what they struggle with, what does that lead to, how do you solve it, who have you solved it for, what's your guarantee, something like that. Imagine this takes you 1.5 minutes to run. This will take you 35 seconds to run. So if you design a system like this, and this is what I want you to understand. If you design a system like this, one time with your data and with your instructions, effectively, by writing some inputs that take you maybe 2 to 5 minutes, because you actually want to think about this, because this is what I'm going to explain to you next. Inputs and outputs correlation. In 35 seconds you can have 54 different variations of ads that you can copy chief or that you can use. Think of the power of that for 1 second. Think of the power of that. Another good thing about this is that you can specify how long you want each section to be. Example, Google Ads, when it's the search ads, they have 30 characters max. Imagine 30 words. Imagine, no, 30 characters. Imagine you asking your copywriter to be like, okay, I need you to write a headline, but it needs to be 30 characters max. He'd flip his head, literally. He'd be like, okay, write something how to desired outcome in X amount of time. Okay, it's 45 characters. If I cut this, okay, it's 43. And you wouldn't be able to in the time frame that you needed to. But here, you can program the AI to output 1 needs to be 30 characters long. Output 2 can be as much as you want. Output 3, you can program it, pre-handle. And what are these outputs? As you remember, these are market research outputs. Yeah, some output, this is missing. Output, this is market research, market research, market research, or ICP study, whatever you want to call it. Let me show you my shirt, very good shirt. This will be a list of all angles. This will be hooks. This will be bodies. This will be CTAs. This takes 2 minutes. This takes 40 seconds. The output is 54 different ads. Now let me talk about inputs versus outputs correlation. But before I do, this might seem complex, which it is. This took me a lot of time to learn. What would I recommend? I would recommend you watching this a bunch of times, and I would recommend you seriously to watch my previous videos, because I will link it above. I don't know how to do it, but I will discover how to link a video in another video. Why? Because in another video, my last video, I explained this in the platform itself. But here I'm explaining the theory. But if you want to see it in practice and in action, you will see here. I'm going to finish this video with 2 things. Three. Inputs, outputs, how to build it, and how to test it. I'm going to explain these 3, and then I'm going to cut it. Inputs, outputs, it looks a bit something like this. So let's say you taught the system how to write it. Okay, that's the fixed variable. And you have the input, which is what does he struggle with. If as an input you write he struggles with acquiring customers at a cheap cost, the outputs will be related to that problem. But if you write it, he struggles to acquire customers profitably, the output will take that. So profitably instead of cheap. Whatever you write in the input, it's what you'll get in the output. This is very good. Why? Because for one problem, which is struggling to make ads profitable, you can write this in like 7 different ways, which is struggling to acquiring customers profitably, or struggling to find an organic traffic source, or struggling with managing budget to grow his business. And every different way you write it, it will give you a different output. And you just have to run it through the system. So what I normally do is, let's say I have all of my inputs. This I don't change, this I don't change, this I don't change, this I don't change. I will change the middle input, which is what does he struggle with, like 7 or 8 times, because that will give me different ads. So for example, say this is his problem. and you figure out how to write this in 3 different ways, or how to word it in 3 different ways. If you run the system, so you keep this the same, all of these you keep the same, and you change this 3 times, you'll have 54 times 3 adds, which is 162 different adds in 5 minutes, because all you have to do is change a word here. Powerful? I think so. Now, I understand a lot of you won't understand the potential of it, because this is ahead of our time. The future generation will understand it. If you are the one that understands this right now, thank you. Because to me, I see this as my craft. I absolutely love this, because this has so much to it, and people think it's just tell ChatGPT to do this or to do that, or to write it like this or to write it like that. That couldn't be further from the truth. There's so much to it, so much to it. Let's continue. How to build it. Let's say what you are writing is a large language model for hooks, one for body, one for CTA. You don't want to build all of these into one system and then test one at a time. No, what you want to do is you want to first build an individual one for hooks. Then when you nail this, you're going to create a new one with just body. Then when you nail this, you're going to create one for just CTA. And when you nail all 3, then you take all of this and you create it into a system. Okay? So instead of doing all of them at once, you do all of them individually and then you connect them. This is very important, because if not, you won't be able to test it, because you'll see that the platform hallucinates when you're trying to test different things at the same time. Now, if you've seen one of my latest videos, you know that you have a lot of things you have to test for, which is you have to test LLM, so GPT versus Claude. You have to test model, which is let's say you went with Claude 2.0 versus 3.0. You have to test instructions and database. And now you ask me, Andre, how do I know which one to use? And I'm going to show you. I have 2 different ways to test it. In order for you to test something, this is like an equation. For example, H2H plus O equals H2O. This is the water equation. How did they test this? They first started with H plus O. This didn't result in water. Then they tested H2 plus O. This resulted in water. But for example, let's say they tested as well O2 plus H. This didn't result in water. And O2 plus H2. This didn't result in water. Notice that they changed only one variable at a time. Because if they went from H plus O to 2H plus 2O, so instead of changing one variable at a time, they changed 2 variables at a time, we would never have water. Think about that. And this is no different. If you want to test for what large language model you need to be using, this is how you'll test it. You'll have the same input to a large language model with no database. Large language model will have the same instructions and the same prompt. And here you'll have a different. This is the same, this is the same, this is the same. Only one thing changes. Here you are using GPT 4.0, here you are using Claude 3.0. The one who gets the best output, notice, all of this is the same, this is the same. So these are all the same, these are all the same. All that you are changing is the model in here. The one that gets the best output is the one that you choose. So for example, let's say Claude gives you the best output. Okay, so now I know my large language model is Claude. Okay, now how do I test if it's Claude 2 or Claude 3? We're going to do exactly the same. With the same input for both. Both of the large language models will have the same prompt and the same instruction, only that this one will be with 2.0, this one will be with 3.0. The one who gets the best output, you will declare that as the winner. Let's say it's 3.0. Okay, so now we know. Our model, our large language model is Claude, because we tested one against the other. Fixed variables. Everything is the same. All that we are changing is the large language model. Claude versus GPT. That's what we are testing. Then we've tested for model and we clarified that 3.0 is the winner. Now we wanted to test instructions. Let's say you want to build two sets of instructions. You're going to test it now with the same model, same large language model, and same input. So inputs will all be input 1, because it's the same input. Large language model, it's the same one. So this is Claude 3. The prompts will be the same and the instructions will be different. And the better instructions win. Oops. Then on database, you have two different types of databases. You have data loaders, which are doc, and you have knowledge base, which is docs plus search, or docsim 1. Again, how do you test it? Very easy. Same large language model, same input. Here you use doc, here you use docsim. With the same information, just a different structure. The one that performs best is the one you choose. So let's say it's doc. Okay, now I know. 1 second. This will give you the structure of your build. Because you've tested all of the variables one against another. So you know it's Claude, you know it's 3.0, and you know it's docs. Now, how do you test the system? Because let's say the system is performing the output, model, instructions, prompt, database, inputs. Let's say the output is starting with a statement and you want it to start with a question. There are two ways which you can change the system: database or instructions. Instructions, it's easier. What you'll do, let's say you have the instructions like this: you are XYZ. Your job is XYZ. These are and then on the prompt you have these are the examples, all of that. Where you will make the changes depending on the outputs that you get at first is in the instructions. So you would come here and you'd say start with a question. Because do you remember what I told you at the beginning? Instructions is where you teach it how to write. So what you'll do, and now I'm going to speak a little bit lower so you can understand. With the first outputs that you get, you will see all of the changes that need to be made and you will put them in the instructions until you get something like this. I'm going to make a different video on the instructions because no one knows how to do instructions. Literally, no one knows how to do instructions, how to format instructions, how to test instructions. I'm gonna do a video on that, don't you worry. But I want to finish with this. As you saw, you will have to test the system and make changes to it in order for it to perform. Which leads me to my final point, which is you actually need to know how to do the thing you are creating a system for. Because think about it. How can you create a system to write hooks if you yourself don't know how to write hooks? You can't. So this is critical. You have to know how to do it in order to create a system for it. And this is why I said at the beginning that this is not for beginners. This is for people, for companies that already have mastered their service delivery, but now they have too many clients that they need to fulfill this for, and they do not have the resources to fulfill for all of them. And what this does is this takes your great quality at creating a service delivery, and we create a system for you that you can deliver your system, your service, like you know how to at scale without operations breaking, so you can onboard 50 clients, 100 clients, 150, and you know that they will be delivered with the same or better quality, and your operations won't break. And now I just saw that my mic is on the floor, so I don't know if this was heard correctly, and this would be a shame because this is the second time that I'm recording this, because before I didn't have the proper lighting. But now another question is, okay Andre, I don't know how to build this, but how would you build one of these for me? That's a good question. It's what our onboarding call functions for. This is where I literally pick at you for 3 hours straight, not 3 hours, that's an overstatement, where I pick at you in every single little process that goes into you providing your service, so I can then watch the call recording, take my notes, put them into a Miro, and create the system based on it. So create the instructions, create the structure, create the database, set the settings that I didn't talk about in this video, then create the structure. This is it. This was a lot of information. I gotta go check now if you heard all of this on the audio. This is something that I wish someone had taught me. Like, I've been doing this for 15 months now, and I only started building this way 3 months ago. And it's been a game changer for me and for my clients. And I wish someone had taught me this earlier, but now I'm teaching it to you. Now it's your responsibility to do something with it. If you like this video, I hope you leave a comment or subscribe or share this with your business partners, whoever you want. I'll be making way more videos like this, so if you didn't understand this, don't worry about it. If you didn't understand this, I'm gonna leave some links here that will teach you this on the platform itself. If you want to get access to the platform, you can go to the first link down below. Now, this is going to be an evergreen video, so right now there might not be any resource on the description, but if you come check in 1 month, there's going to be a resource. If you come check in 3 months from now, there's going to be another resource. If you come check 1 year from now, there's going to be 3 resources. So keep coming back to this video to seeing what resources I updated, because I'm going to put all of this into a document so you can have it as your Bible. But yeah, that's it for me. Hope you have a good day. May God bless you.